Welcome to the Irish NFL Show's Week 4 preview. Good evening to all of you, as always, joining us on YouTube Live. We'll preview all 16 games for this week, and there are 16 games this week. There won't be next week, of course, because it's the first bye week in Week 5. We break up our preview, as we always do, over 4 parts. Those 4 separate preview segments are also available, of course, as podcasts. Just a reminder as well that you can check out our Thursday Night Football preview podcast wherever you get your podcasts. Ben Raven, Lions beat writer, joined Brian and Andrew Morgan to discuss the NFC North clash between the Lions and the Packers, which kicks off at 1:20 a.m. on Friday morning. We're going to start our Week 4 preview with the games from the early Sunday window, and a reminder that the Sunday window starts a little bit earlier than normal this week because, of course, Falcons and Jags. The first game we're going to preview in just a second comes from Wembley. This preview is brought to you by RuPoint, demonstrating the value of global PR and comms. You can see how RuPoint can help your business at rupoint.com. So it's Sunday, 2:30 at Wembley in London. Colin will be in attendance. He's obviously shirt shopping, so he can't join us this evening. He needs to make sure he's decked out in the sartorial elegance to which we are accustomed for that game from Wembley. So it's just myself and Brian this evening, Brian. And we start with Falcons, Jags. And both sides coming off a loss in Week 3. The received wisdom is that the Jags, because they're playing essentially at home, quote unquote, in London, and they're so used to it, should have a bit of an edge here. Who needs it more, do you think?
I would think the Jags need it more. The expectation going into the season, bearing in mind where the AFC South is with the Colts and the Texans with new rookie quarterbacks, and the Titans are in a bit of a flux. I mean, we've seen that, already they're strong at home, albeit only one game, and they're quite poor so far on the road. But in terms of this game, who needs it more? The Jags need it more. Like we saw last week, the Jags lost by 20 points last week, and in fairness, we put it down to a really strong performance by the Texans. But I was reflecting on the game and the mistakes in which they made throughout the course of the game. I know we did touch on it on Tuesday, but I kind of delved into the details today, like a red zone fumble, a penalty on a 4th down conversion,
Block field goal,
missed field goal, block field goal, 5 missed tackles on a kickoff return by a fullback Beck, who Colin would know well from his Broncos days. I mean, they couldn't get out of their own way last week.
A beautiful statistical note, and I don't mean this in any way as body shaming, but Andrew Beck, officially the heaviest player in NFL history ever to return a kickoff for a touchdown, 255 pounds, and he managed to drop it before he picked it up. That's quite the rumble.
So when they played it on red zone, I just get away from the game. When they played that particular play on red zone, and I saw him dropping it, I went, "Oh, okay, we know what's coming here. He's going to get hit, and the ball's going to go
everywhere." He wasn't even supposed to return the kickoff, was he? Like, he's not the returner; he's there to block.
Oh God! But look, this is the point of the game. They got too cute with themselves. That was 70-10 mid-third quarter. Bearing in mind they were down by 2 touchdowns. Sorry, they were down 17 at halftime. They eroded a 17-point deficit to 10 points. They're well in the game. It was early third quarter. They kind of got away from things, and we did kind of call it the Texans, in fairness, deserved their win. I looked at this game and I'm critical. We have been critical of the Jags defense going into the season. Over the course of the 3 weeks, they've been quite run in their run defense, and they're going to go up against a running game in Algier and Bijan, who are like on their day are really strong. Maybe Cordell Patterson might even be available. If he's back again, he's another string to the bow. But I'll side with the Jags in this one. I was a bit taken back by how the ease of the Lions defense last week in terms of how they, prepared and took care of Bijan and essentially shut down the running game. And when you shut down the Falcons running game, Desmond Ridder needs that running game to work for him to be able to be in a position to, in terms of put themselves in a position that they have to focus on the run game. It gives them the option to go past. You got your Drake Londons, Kyle Pitts, but without a run game, we saw it last week. They didn't have to. They were struggling. I'm not necessarily going to say it'll be the same this week in the manner of that performance, but I think Jags will win. Jags win by 10. It's the 10th home game they've ever had in London. I go something in the region of 27-17 type of game with the Jags coming out on top.
Yeah, I'm going to pick the baton up from where you just left it there, because watching the Falcons game against the Lions last week, you saw what you're going to see from the better stocked defenses that the Falcons are going to face this year, and particularly a team like the Lions that's put in the investment on the D-line. Stack boxes, daring them to beat them with their arm, daring Ridder to go out and sling the ball, which, to be fair, Arthur Smith has let him do, which is the right thing to do. Like, they backed him, they expressed confidence in him. They set him up as best they can to go and win. Having that strong running game and having the kind of talent that they have available in the backfield, including Bijan, including Cordarrelle Patterson, as you say, if he's back, is a big help in taking some of the load off him. But they are a run-heavy team. And when the Lions found a way to shut that down, it became very difficult very, very quickly. I'm not so sure the Jags are going to put up anything quite as stout. As you say, the flip side of the Jags with all those self-inflicted wounds last week is that you expect well-coached teams, and Pedersen is a Super Bowl winning coach, and we're full of praise for what he did with them last season. You expect them to clean that sort of stuff up from week to week. It's a 2-week stand for the Jags in London. They're well used to playing there. They know how this goes. They can navigate some of the tricky elements to it that come with the disruption and with the travel and all that. I think you add that all up, and I have the Jags as one-score winners like you. I think they will emerge the right side of this. I think Falcons are one of those teams, I'm quite high on, given that they come from quite a weak division, or what we thought would be, and seems to have turned out to be a relatively weak division. I still think they're probably playoff bound on balance. They've started the season better than they've started any of the last few seasons, but I think there's a limit to what they can do, and I think we've seen the real limits to what Ritter can do in that offense. There's only so much disguising they can do. I think as the season wears on, the cuter defenses, the better coached teams, as we say, the teams that are better equipped to stop the run are going to make it very tricky for them. Again, I'm not sure the Jags are necessarily that team that's going to shut them down, but I think the Jags have enough to get over the line here.
I saw a point today that, and when I reflected, I said, yeah, it's a fair argument. People are saying the Jags would have the advantage because they're used to being in the UK and playing in London. Albeit they're not here consistently. The Falcons were here 2 years ago. They played the Jets 2 years ago in Tottenham. Albeit this game's at Wembley. Arthur Smith was the head coach. A contingent of the coaching staff are still there. The players, there's been a massive turnover in the players, but the coaching staff will understand the natures of this travel. So maybe we shouldn't focus too much or home in too much on the fact that the Jags are used to this scenario. Like the Falcons, 2 years, they're only 2 years removed from being here. So I'd imagine they will quickly refer back to all the bits, do's and don'ts they did 2 years ago.
Moving on to the 6 o'clock games, Brian. Ravens-Browns, first one up there. It just seems like all the AFC North games are going to be over by about week 5 or 6. They seem to have had all of the key divisional rivalries there, all out of the way. The first half of nearly all those matchups is nearly done by now. The Browns, you called them out from the start of the season as one of the teams that you were going to be looking closely on, and you see them winning the division and heading to the playoffs. Of course, the AFC North, I don't think any team has managed to win it 3 years in a row, and 2 decades or more. So while a lot of people, myself included, were high in the Bengals, you'd actually pick the Browns to win the division. And so far, we've seen them bear out exactly what you predicted. The 3 best defensive performances of the season by any team so far. Yeah. Number 1, the Browns. Number 2, the Browns. Number 3, the Browns. They've been absolutely dominant. They've given their offense time to settle in. Deshaun Watson has looked slightly better week on week. Still, although the stats are not too bad, the eye test is still puzzling. He doesn't look quite right. It doesn't look certainly up to what they're paying him. If Colin was here, he'd point out again, all that guaranteed money, you expect guaranteed success, and it's been far from that. They've recovered from the loss of Nick Chubb really well. They obviously drafted Kareem Hunt in there. Jerome Ford has given them a lift as well with the performances that he's had. But it's Myles Garrett on that Browns defense. They have Delpit, the new guy in the secondary there, looks amazing as well. They've just terrified teams so far this year, and it's been really impressive. I mean, they kept the Titans to under 100 yards last week, and Titans, who'd actually looked good in the first 2 weeks of the season, left to go off and think it all up again. The Ravens, on the other hand, the team that we said, yeah, Lamar is back 2 weeks ago, and then they lay an egg against the Colts, lose the game that they probably should have won. They had some bad luck as well, but that's a game you think with Gardner Minshew in that the Ravens really should have taken care of. This one's in Cleveland. I don't see any other result than the Browns coming out on top.
Okay, I'm surprised by that, but no, obviously you're buying into what I've been suggesting. But no, you've hit the nail on the head. I was looking at the points in which they've given up. They gave 3 points in the first game against the Bengals. They only gave up 12 against the Steelers, 26 points. But bear in mind, 14 of those came on turnovers by the Steelers defense. 3, 12, and 3. Best pass rush in the league so far. And as you touched on, it's a lockdown secondary. Of course, over the course of the 3 games. And the Ravens, if they're playing a better team, I'd be saying, right, this is the real true test. And it will be, because it's an NFC North clash. But the inconsistencies of the Ravens offense is a bit alarming for me, because they played it was up and down week 1 against the Texans. They were really strong against the Bengals. And bear in mind that Bengals defense that played so well on Monday with the sacks, from Hendrickson and Hubbard. Like, they were really, like, that got them over the line on Monday Night Football. And it's got the Browns over the line in some of these games. But again, it'd be interesting what offense we see from the Ravens, because last week they started again at home. It seems to be more at home than it does be on the road. They seem to be more fit to playing on the road as opposed to at home. I don't know why that is. Maybe it'll, over the course of the season, home wins will come to fruition. But no, I'm with the Browns. I think defensively, I think they'll find a way to slow Lamar down if Lamar has to get into a situation where it's a run-pass option type scenario offense. I think the Browns defensively, and maybe Deshaun Watson needs a defense like this that allows him to gradually get up to speed over the course of the season. But Colin is right, and you called it out yourself. The expectation is so high because of the contract. People expect immediate results. That's not going to happen, unfortunately. It's not the Deshaun Watson we saw a couple of years ago. But if he's serviceable and the defense is doing the job, ultimately, does that get them to the playoffs? I think it will, yeah. Browns for me, yeah.
Next up, 2 teams that the Browns have handled over the last couple of weeks, the Bengals at the Titans. Brian, again, it's the big Joe Burrow question. There's no getting away from it. As we were saying on Monday night against the Rams, a lot of people and of course the defense stepped up to support Burrow, and that's the sign of a championship caliber team, right? They can find ways to win when it's difficult, and they're carrying the injured Burrow so far. It's not sustainable, but you feel like however long it takes, 2, 3, maybe 4 weeks, they may just be able to do enough. I don't think their schedule is overly demanding from what I can remember off the top of my head going into the next couple of weeks. This Titans game, though, is a tricky one. Like, the Titans will really be keen to bounce back. Vrabel's the kind of coach that's backed up tough losses with big wins week in, week out during his career. They will not be happy with the way they showed up or didn't show up against the Browns last week. They really got put back in their box. That's what Vrabel expects his team to do to other teams. The Titans don't expect to be manhandled the way that they were. As we said, the Titans had less than 100 yards on offense last week. I still think, if the Bengals are going to do anything, and the expectation and the pressure they put on themselves, they've just got to win this. I fancied them to beat the Rams last week, and that turned out to be right. And I still think they're going to find a way. That's what they've been doing. They find ways to win. Again, last season they started off hit and miss. Like, they were 4-4 after 8 games last season, and then they went on the tear when things clicked. This year it's different, obviously, because of the Burrow injury, but that's the thing that's holding them back. And I think once that does get resolved, and we hope it does for the good of football, never mind the good of the Bengals, because who doesn't want to watch Joe Burrow unless your team is up against him? I think they will just about have enough to handle this one. I feel slightly nervous saying that because at times it really hasn't looked pretty for them, but they found ways to win. And like I say, that's what good teams do.
It's uncanny how early this game is in the season compared to last year. Very similar circumstances. They start off slowly. We touched on it, they were 0-2. They then beat the Titans 2016 in a hard-fought game that really could have went either way. I'd flip it to the Titans. I know you've made all the merits around. We're going to see the Bengals improve. When is Derrick Henry going to improve? Because he's only had 163 yards in 3 games. And we're so used to seeing Derrick Henry get 163 yards in one game. I've seen him go over the 200, and yet so far all he's done is 163 yards after 3 games. Is there going to be a breakout game? You would imagine there is. I'm going to lean Titans on this one. I liked them 2 weeks ago against the Chargers. It's just something about them when they play at home. And in fairness, you could argue just the Bengals have been there. They beat them in the championship game. Divisional game a couple of years ago. They beat them last season. This is actually, they've beaten 3 in a row, so they've had their number. I think it has to change. If the Bengals, they will look to slow Derrick Henry down. If they can do that, then I think, yeah, okay, fine. I can see an argument as to why the Bengals will get over the line. I see it's been a low-scoring, close game. I'm not sure Burrow is ready. I think the pass rush of the Titans will give him a difficult day. I'll lean a close game. I'll go Titans.
Yeah, speaking of low-scoring, close games, we have the basement brawl up next. Broncos at Bears. Thankfully, Colin isn't here to...
He'd blow a gasket if he was here, wouldn't he?
To compete on which team is the worst team in football. So I guess I'll advance the case for the Bears shortly, but I'm going to leave this one in your court first. What's going to happen?
Oh God, this is a difficult one, isn't it? Really, yeah. It's. I don't think it's as bad as it may seem for both teams. I genuinely saying that, and Colin jokes, thinks I'm just saying that to be nice about my colleagues on the show. But I genuinely just think if they, for example, if the Vikings were to win on Sunday, I know I'm getting away from the point I had in the game. The Vikings win on Sunday at 1-3. People will say, okay, the Vikings can turn things around. I know the 2 teams aren't at that level, But like it's still very early in the season. Now, whoever loses, obviously, they're on a completely different track to the other. But if the Bears win, for example, and then they go to Washington on Thursday, which, like, with all due respect, they could navigate a victory there. The Bengals have the Jets the following week. They could win that game. Like, it's very early in the season to be essentially putting this game as the must-win game. I'm going to go Bears, actually. I'm going to go Bears because I've looked at the Broncos. The Broncos are the worst defense in the league right now. Now, I know people would distort that and say they gave up 70 points, but that's not even what I'm talking about. Statistically, over the course of a lot of different ranges that you look at defensive schemes and all the various different points, yards given up and stuff, they've been the worst team. They've given up 105 points in 2 games, like 35 the week prior at home to the Commanders. They're not getting anything right defensively. Their tackling was awful. There was a particular picture that I saw today where there was 3 Broncos players on the floor as I think it was Hill went by them. And the Bears, they've had their struggles and things didn't look right last week. I'm going to go the Bears to come out on the right side of it, but I'm not making the selection with any confidence here. But I just think I think the Broncos defense is in a really bad place right now, and I think Justin Fields could expose that on Sunday.
Yeah,
in the run game, not the passing game.
You're looking at the worst defense in football against the worst offense in football.
Well,
that is
true,
to say by Justin Fields. What concerned me about the Chiefs, and look, I take on board your point. Like, it's funny. I think I was a lot less convinced that the Bears were going to have a breakout season this season than a lot of other Bears fans were going into the year. But I'm not as convinced that it's slash and burn territory right now as other people are. I still think it is, as you say, early in the season. They have a lot of new faces to bet in, and an awful lot of things have gone wrong for the Bears. Now, some of those are self-inflicted wounds, right? Fields has been terrible. The coaching has been terrible. The O-line has been terrible. A lot of the new faces that have been brought in. There's a funny thing in the way that Ryan Poles has approached this. And I suppose you have to bear in mind it's his first general manager role as well. I was listening to the Under Center podcast, a Bears podcast earlier this week. And one of the points they were making is he's put value on the positions that other teams don't. Like, he's invested in the areas like linebacker. They brought in Tremaine Edmonds and TJ Edwards. Let Roquan Smith go, of course. They paid money in that position, yet they haven't done much on the defensive line. They've no pass rush. They're getting no pressure up front. So what you have is, a well-paid, talent-rich linebacker core who can't do anything. They're constantly getting picked apart in coverage because there's no pressure up front. You have the strength of the Bears defense, such as it is, in the secondary, and they're all injured. So, like, there are challenges as well there that are not necessarily to do with coaching. What concerns me, though, about the Bears is you're seeing consistently, and Bill Barnwell at ESPN has been great in his analysis of this, receivers and tight ends run into the same spot on the field, like really poor execution. The Bears had a delay of game penalty after a kickoff, the opening possession of a kickoff after a kickoff against the Chiefs last week. That is inexcusable. The players know the play going in. There is no way the execution should be that poor. You then have things like Chase Claypool being called out for lack of effort in blocking. Go and look at the clips on YouTube. He's not even trying. This is a guy in a contract year. So that speaks to, execution is a matter of coaching. Effort is a matter of culture. How is that being tolerated?
Who only got a trade last year? Like, essentially,
how is that being tolerated? Bears came up to the 32nd overall pick in the draft, effectively a first round pick because the Dolphins didn't have a first round pick last year. That was the first pick in the second round, but 32nd pick overall. So that's a huge level of concern. And a lot of Bears fans are calling for a house to be cleared. However, I still do think there's enough talent there. I still do think there are things that can work. And, the pressure is on them, but it's also in a funny way off them. Like, it cannot get any worse than that game against the Chiefs last week. And this could be a game where they bounce back. Having said all that, I'm picking the Broncos to win this one because I just think it's too much to turn around in too short a time. I don't think it's quite.
You're going in such a direction there. I thought, okay, this is only going one way.
Yeah, I'm showing you a level of misdirection that you never see from Luke Getsy coaching the Bears offense, by the way, where they're entirely predictable. Let's hope, to your point, if Justin Fields can get his mojo back a little bit, if he can find a way to not look completely lost, overthinking it, holding the ball for too long, taking terrible sacks, not throwing the ball quickly enough when receivers are open, and as you say, using his legs in the way that he was using them so well last year, maybe. But it's a team that's lost 13 games in a row. No other team over that span has won fewer than 3 games. The Bears haven't won a single game. Like, they're losing, unfortunately, has become a habit for them.
They need to get a consistent run game going. You saw it last week. They started off, I know it's very early in the game, it's hard to focus on the opening drive, but they had some nice runs and then quickly get away from that. And just time and time again, even when they're not down by many points, they're going with 3 throws in a row. Like, that's not Justin Fields' game. You need to get a consistent run game, get the defense off kilter, and get them on their toes, and where they're trying to judge what's coming. But when you know what's coming, it's easy. Like, it's easy for a lot of teams, especially Chiefs defense. That's when right now is playing actually quite well. But yeah, look, that's why I think I lean Bears because what I've seen in the Broncos defense, in particular, the tackling last week was terrible. And if Justin Fields is allowed to get out on the perimeter, will his tackling improve? I'm not sure it will.
Very good. Right, that's where we leave it for the first part of our Week 4 preview, brought to you by RuPoint, demonstrating the value of global PR and comms. Find out more at rupoint.com.